They banked for Hitler, and still own much of Europe today. Few names hold as much quiet power as Wallenberg, yet outside Sweden, almost no one knows who they are. No golden mansions, no celebrity headlines, just an invisible dynasty, richer than royalty, pulling the strings of nations, banks, and corporations for over 150 years. If you're fascinated by how unseen forces shape our world, hit subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and stay till the end. Because this story is one of the most shocking financial legacies in history. This isn't fiction. This is real, documented power hiding in plain sight. Let's go back to the beginning, to a small Swedish bank founded in 1856 by André Oskar Wallenberg. His ambition was clear: control capital, and you control countries. But unlike the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds, the Wallenbergs had a different approach. They ruled from the shadows. They didn't flaunt money. They became the system that created it. By the early 1900s, they already controlled Sweden's most powerful banks, brokerages, and investment firms, all under a quiet family motto that still defines them today: esse non videre, to be, not to be seen. Through their powerful investment arm, Investor AB, the Wallenbergs would weave their control across Europe, owning pieces of companies like Ericsson, Saab, ABB, Electrolux, AstraZeneca, and dozens more. But behind the balance sheets and boardrooms was something darker, a series of moral compromises and secret deals that would define Europe's 20th century. When World War II began, Sweden declared neutrality. But neutrality is rarely pure. The Wallenbergs were at the center of it all. Their bank, Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, SEB, became the quiet middleman between Nazi Germany, the Allies, and neutral countries. On paper, they were helping both sides trade. In reality, they were moving vast sums of money, gold, and industrial materials, some of it looted, some of it strategic, across a continent on fire. But here's the contradiction that makes the Wallenbergs so fascinating and terrifying. While some family members worked with Nazi financiers and handled their gold, others like Raoul Wallenberg risked everything to save Jewish lives in Hungary, issuing thousands of protective passports and personally facing down German soldiers to pull victims out of death marches. The same family, funding both sides of morality. This duality, profit and conscience, became the Wallenberg legacy. After the war, the US Treasury blacklisted their bank for aiding Nazi-linked companies, freezing their assets abroad. Yet within a decade, they had rebuilt their power, stronger than ever. How? By mastering a financial weapon most people never even see: foundations. Instead of holding wealth personally, the Wallenbergs transferred control of their empire into tax-exempt charitable foundations, a brilliant move that made their fortune legally invisible. These foundations, such as the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, technically own controlling shares in Investor AB and the companies it invests in. But because the foundations are for the public good, their holdings aren't taxed, and their true financial influence remains hidden from scrutiny. It's estimated that through these foundations, the Wallenbergs quietly control up to 40% of the entire Swedish stock market. Imagine that. One family, quietly shaping the economy of an entire nation for 6 generations, without ever appearing on Forbes or Bloomberg's rich lists. They don't need to appear. They own the lists. This isn't a story about a banking family. It's about how power survives war, revolution, and time itself. It's about how money becomes influence, and influence becomes invisible. And the more invisible it becomes, the harder it is to challenge. When the bombs stopped falling in 1945, Europe was rebuilding. But the Wallenbergs were already 2 steps ahead. They had financed both destruction and reconstruction, quietly guiding industries, deciding which companies would rise, which would fall, and which governments would get their support. Through quiet diplomacy and strategic philanthropy, they became the acceptable face of capitalism, Sweden's moral conscience on the surface, and its financial engine beneath. And perhaps the most fascinating part? They're still doing it, right now. Behind every major Swedish multinational, there's a Wallenberg seat at the table. Behind Sweden's neutral international policies, there's often a whisper of Wallenberg influence. Calm, careful, corporate. They avoid scandals, avoid politics, avoid the spotlight, yet nothing truly big in Sweden happens without them. And though they once helped finance Hitler's war machine, today they sit on the boards of global tech and pharmaceutical giants that shape our modern lives. It's not just about money anymore. It's about legacy management. They turned wealth into a structure, one that can never die. And that's the story we're about to uncover in this documentary. How a family that banked for Hitler, helped rescue victims, got blacklisted by the US, and then reinvented itself as the moral face of capitalism, came to quietly control one of the richest corners of Europe. Because while other empires fell, theirs learned how to adapt. And in that adaptation lies the secret to how Hitler's secret bankers now own a piece of everything you touch. From your phone, to your car, to your medicine. Stay till the end. Because the way they pulled this off will change how you see power forever. When the guns of World War II thundered across Europe, most banks went silent. But one name, whispered behind closed doors in Berlin, London, and Washington, remained in constant motion: Wallenberg. As nations burned, this family found opportunity in chaos. Through Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, SEB, they became the middlemen of wartime money, a financial bridge between Nazi Germany and the neutral nations still open for business. While Swedish ships carried iron ore that fed Hitler's war machine, SEB quietly processed the transactions that made it possible. Every deal, every ton of steel, every shipment of oil, a fraction of it passed through Wallenberg hands. But this wasn't greed for the sake of gold. It was strategy. The Wallenbergs understood something few did at the time, that wars end, but capital endures. They didn't fight for sides, they fought for position. And by staying neutral, Sweden became the last functioning financial hub on the continent, the eye of the hurricane where empires came to trade in secret. Still, neutrality had its price. When Allied intelligence began to trace Nazi gold, some smelted from looted central banks, some even rumored to have been stolen from concentration camps. A familiar trail kept leading back to Swedish banks. Among them, SEB stood out. By 1945, the US Treasury's investigation named it directly, accusing it of aiding German industrial giants like IG Farben and Bosch in shielding their assets abroad. For the Wallenbergs, it was a nightmare, but also a test. Would their empire survive a reckoning that brought down entire nations? Their solution was brilliant and ruthless. Instead of denying everything, they quietly agreed to cooperate with post-war investigations, offering selective information that painted them as reluctant intermediaries rather than conspirators. They handed over minor figures, closed a few accounts, and spoke publicly about restoring Europe's moral and financial order. Behind the scenes, however, they were negotiating for survival. They leveraged their immense industrial influence through companies like SKF, the world's largest ball-bearing supplier, and Electrolux, to remind Allied governments that dismantling the Wallenbergs would collapse Sweden's economy. In short, punish us, and you punish Europe's recovery. And it worked. By 1947, the US had quietly lifted the blacklist on SEB. The Wallenbergs emerged bruised, but not broken. Their wartime reputation had been rewritten from collaborators to necessary neutrals. They had done what they always did best, turned scandal into strategy. But the most haunting irony of all was unfolding in parallel, within their own bloodline. While Jacob and Marcus Wallenberg, the banking patriarchs, negotiated with both Nazi and Allied leaders, their relative Raoul Wallenberg was risking his life in Budapest. Using diplomatic cover, Raoul issued thousands of Swedish protective passes to Jews marked for deportation, one of the greatest individual rescue efforts in the Holocaust. He became a legend, the family's moral redemption. But when Soviet troops captured Budapest, Raoul vanished. Moscow claimed he died in prison. Others believed he was executed as a Western spy. To this day, his fate remains one of history's great unsolved mysteries. And that's the paradox at the heart of the Wallenberg story. In one family, both savior and opportunist, hero and banker. The post-war years gave them the chance to reinvent themselves completely. While much of Europe lay in ruins, the Wallenbergs positioned their empire at the center of the continent's rebuilding. Through the Marshall Plan, Sweden became a key supplier of industrial goods, and the Wallenbergs made sure their companies got the contracts. SKF's bearings went into American tanks and European cars. Asia's power grids lit up post-war cities, and Ericsson's communications tech rebuilt Europe's infrastructure. But perhaps their greatest move wasn't industrial. It was structural. To protect their fortune from the next war, the next scandal, or even the next generation's mistakes, they created a system of financial immortality. They transferred most of their wealth into a network of family-controlled foundations, supposedly non-profit entities that funded science, education, and public good. But beneath the philanthropy was genius. These foundations held majority shares in Investor AB, which held controlling stakes in all major Wallenberg companies. The trick? No individual owned the assets, so there was no one to tax, no one to arrest, no one to inherit. The family merely managed the foundations as trustees, passing power like a crown from one generation to the next. That structure, invented in the 1950s, still stands today. It's the reason the Wallenbergs remain the most powerful family in Sweden, even though technically they don't own anything. Their motto, esse non videre, to be, not to be seen, became their shield. They appeared as philanthropists, funding Nobel Prizes, universities, and research institutions, all while their corporate empire expanded into pharmaceuticals, aviation, telecommunications, and defense. By the 1970s, the Wallenbergs had become untouchable, quietly shaping policy from boardrooms, not parliaments. Every Swedish prime minister, whether left or right, had to cooperate with them. Their foundations were too intertwined with national projects to oppose. They had evolved from bankers into architects of a system that transcended politics. While America had the Rockefellers and Europe had the Rothschilds, Sweden had the Wallenbergs. Except the latter had mastered something far more dangerous: invisibility. The name didn't appear on rich lists, headlines, or scandals. Their family members didn't seek fame. They appeared dignified, humble, sometimes even boring. But that anonymity was deliberate. The less the world saw, the more they could control. And while much of the world was distracted by Cold War tensions, oil crises, and market crashes, the Wallenbergs quietly expanded their global footprint into pharmaceuticals, biotech, telecommunications, and aerospace. Companies like AstraZeneca, ABB, and Saab became their new empire. Industries too vital to fail, too intertwined to trace back to any single person. Even after 6 generations, their influence remained consistent. Their family councils decided strategic directions every decade. Their foundations funded Sweden's research and innovation. Their banks adapted to modern regulations, and their wealth kept compounding through ownership of the country's most stable blue-chip stocks. It's a form of economic dynasty that never dies, because it's not built on luxury or ego. It's built on systems, and that's what makes their power so terrifying. They've achieved what most financial families could only dream of: total dominance without exposure, wealth without headlines, and control without consequence. The same family once accused of aiding the Nazis now shapes the very institutions that fight against corruption, war, and inequality. History's villains became modern saints, simply because they outlasted their critics. And maybe that's the biggest lesson buried beneath this story. The world doesn't remember who was guilty, only who survived. Today, when you hear the names AstraZeneca, Ericsson, Saab, or ABB, you probably think of science, innovation, and progress. But what if I told you all those global giants answer, quietly, to the same family? Not through public ownership, not through political power, but through a web of influence so old, so meticulously designed, that it's practically invisible. That web belongs to the Wallenbergs, a dynasty that learned the greatest secret of power. You don't need to be seen to rule. More than 6 generations later, the Wallenbergs still sit at the center of Sweden's economy. Roughly 40% of the Stockholm Stock Exchange's value can be traced back to companies they control or influence. Yet if you look for their name on rich lists, you'll find nothing. No billionaire heirs flaunting luxury, no scandals, no tabloids, just silence. But beneath that silence lies an empire of control built not on money, but on mechanisms. It starts with Investor AB, the crown jewel of their structure. This single company owns major stakes in the country's most powerful corporations. And who owns Investor AB? A web of non-profit foundations, all created by the Wallenberg family. Those foundations, with names like the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, the Marcus and Amalia Wallenberg Foundation, and the Marianne and Marcus Wallenberg Foundation are the quiet guardians of power. Officially, they're dedicated to funding education, technology, and medical research. Unofficially, they ensure the family never loses control of Sweden's industrial core. They donate billions to universities, Stockholm, Uppsala, Lund. But those grants come with influence. The foundations fund entire research departments, steering Sweden's scientific agenda. They shape innovation, infrastructure, and even military policy through strategic funding, all while being untouchable by normal taxation laws. It's a masterpiece of modern feudalism. They rule through institutions, not individuals. When critics question how one family can hold so much sway in a democracy, the answer is always the same. It's for the public good. And technically, it is. The Wallenberg foundations do fund hospitals, laboratories, scholarships, and entire technology hubs. But what no one can quite answer is this: who decides where that money goes? The answer, once again, is the Wallenbergs. Each foundation's board is stacked with family members, bankers, lawyers, and industrial strategists, all tracing their lineage to the same bloodline. Through them, the family dictates which sectors grow, which companies merge, and which industries get priority funding. It's not a government deciding the future of Sweden. It's a family council that meets behind closed doors. And because they operate under the guise of public service, they're above most political scrutiny. Politicians come and go. The Wallenbergs remain. Even global corporations depend on them. During the COVID-19 pandemic, AstraZeneca, a company with deep Wallenberg roots, became one of the world's leading vaccine suppliers. Ericsson, another cornerstone of the empire, still builds the digital infrastructure that powers Europe's 5G networks. Saab, their defense arm, manufactures fighter jets and weapon systems used across NATO. Together, these companies form a silent triangle of influence: health, communication, and defense. If you control those three sectors, you don't need to run a government, you own the system. But the most astonishing part? The Wallenbergs didn't just inherit this power, they evolved it. They've adapted to every era: monarchy, democracy, depression, world war, globalization, digitalization, without ever being dethroned. In the 21st century, they understood something critical: visibility is vulnerability. While tech billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos dominate headlines, the Wallenbergs stay invisible, managing trillions in collective assets through holding companies and funds spread across Europe and North America. When reporters try to trace their personal wealth, they find nothing. Their houses belong to trusts. Their shares belong to foundations. Their influence is hidden in boards and policies, not balance sheets. It's the perfect disguise: wealth without ownership. And that's how they've survived every storm. When global capitalism gets attacked, the Wallenbergs are never the target, because technically, they don't own anything. When governments tighten financial regulations, foundations are exempt. When taxes rise, charitable trusts remain untouched. It's not just wealth management, it's power immortality. Their motto, esse non videre, to be, not to be seen, is more than a saying. It's their operating system. They've taught their heirs to avoid celebrity, avoid luxury, and avoid visibility. You won't find Wallenbergs buying football clubs or launching social media empires. They don't need validation. They already have control. And yet, every time you swipe your phone on an Ericsson network, fly in a jet built by Saab, or take medicine from AstraZeneca, you're connected, indirectly, to the same dynasty that once banked for Hitler, negotiated with the Allies, and built post-war Europe. They've transcended morality and ideology. They're not left or right, capitalist or socialist. They're architects of continuity. The Wallenbergs understand that real power isn't in politics or protest. It's in infrastructure. Whoever builds the systems that society depends on rules silently from the shadows. And that's why, even in 2025, their fingerprints are everywhere, from venture capital in Silicon Valley to pharmaceutical policy in Brussels. When European leaders debate economic strategy, someone from a Wallenberg-connected institution is always at the table. They're not a conspiracy. They're a blueprint. A living example of how wealth, when shielded by purpose, becomes eternal. But there's something poetic about it too. A family that once traded with empires now is an empire. One that transcends borders, generations, and ideologies. The irony? Most Swedes barely talk about them. The Wallenbergs have blended into the national fabric so deeply that questioning their power feels like questioning gravity. It's just there. And that's the ultimate lesson for viewers. Power doesn't always announce itself with crowns or armies. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, in corporate boards, research grants, and charitable trusts. The Wallenbergs discovered what monarchs, magnates, and ministers never could: how to make power permanent by making it invisible. So the next time you hear about billionaires losing fortunes overnight, remember this family that's been quietly ruling for over 160 years, surviving wars, scandals, revolutions, and economic crises. Because when all the headlines fade, when markets crash, when dynasties die, one thing will remain: the Wallenberg machine, silent, strategic, eternal.